It didn't take much more than a bottle and 2 chairs to make a speakeasy. This is what Daniel Okrent said in his book, Last Call, The Rise and Fall of Prohibition. Today, join us for some stories. Get your own bottle, glass, or mug, and relax. This is Speak Easily, and I'm your host, Krista Stauffer.
It goes up and down like the spectrum of your voice and the words.
That's so funny.
Oh, and something, honestly, that's one thing I've not done. I've been performing all my life. I've never sung the national anthem.
Yeah, too much pressure.
I'm not putting it out there. I don't want to
Right.
Because I probably would forget the words.
Right.
Oh, man. Are you a performer then?
No. I did choir growing up.
Okay.
I can't really carry a tune. I think a missed opportunity for me was not being involved in theater growing up. But because of swimming, there just was always the conflict, whether that was with summer theater or in high school and stuff.
Because that takes your every time. And there's no off season for swimming.
Exactly. Right.
No, there's a pool, go.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
Right. So it's one thing that I wish that I had done growing up. And I'd still be totally open to the possibility of doing it. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool too to see people that don't think that they're going to be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And they suddenly get up there and it's like, that was great.
Yeah.
That was really great. Especially when they're not trying.
Sure.
Do you realize how really good you are at this? But
that's cool.
I taught one of like a corporate improv and it was fully online.
Mm-hmm.
You never really know.
That's wild.
They were scrum masters.
Yes.
Which sounds like a cleaning department, but it's not.
Yeah. I forget what it is, but at one point I knew.
Something with data.
Yeah.
Things that are way above my knowledge basis. They were so funny.
Mm-hmm.
Their task was to perform a movie in 60 seconds.
Okay.
Including everybody. So they had to figure out who was playing who.
Uh-huh.
They had to do the movie from start to finish in 60 seconds.
Wow.
And cut them off at 60 seconds.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to prepare, which was most of the time spent on just talking it through and talking and casting and talking. To which I'm usually like, a little less conversation, a little more action, friends. Let's practice.
Right, exactly.
And so when they finally did it, it was one woman rushed upstairs off camera and we're like, what's she doing? She came down with her son Simba so she could do the whole like lifting.
That's awesome.
The stampede, the guys that were in rolling chairs just rolled across the screen.
Nice.
But they didn't finish on time.
Sure.
And I said, okay, so does this ever happen in the workplace? Like, do you ever, talk too much about something instead of putting it into action? Then we're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, I mean, as dumb as it is.
Right. Like they're having fun, but learning a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so funny. I think the stampede was my favorite, though.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun job for you because you can just be entertained the whole time.
I get to play.
Yeah.
I did one for high schoolers this past weekend, but it's such a good skill for everybody to have.
I'm sure it's a good humbling thing for high schoolers too, because there's a lot of like egos and self-consciousness going on that kind of has to go out the window for it to go well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying too that the workshop that I taught was attended by more boys.
Interesting.
A lot of them are based in musical theater, and I know that's not typically, where the guys or the male identifying students come out, but I think this was a chance for these students to finally shine in something.
Yeah.
And to be funny and to be allowed to be funny instead of, okay, let's put you in a box and you are playing this character. Yeah, he's got funny lines, but he's got to be like this.
Yeah.
So
I think when I think about my sense of humor and how it developed, in middle school and stuff, I can think of like 3 boys who I had a lot of classes with, and they were your stereotypical class clowns. And I thought they were so funny how they were able to like take something that had happened earlier in the discussion and then like bring it back up in a humorous way to be able to remember the conversation and work it back in. Such a brilliant type of humor.
Love it.
And so from observing them and then witnessing how the class would react to that and, I'm like, okay, they did that. That's funny.
Yep.
So then I kept trying to think of like, okay, how can I work this back in? You know what I mean? It takes a certain intelligence to be able to be aware of what's going on and then to remember.
But that's also you're being more observant than most.
Exactly. Like you have to be observant. Yeah.
If you're holding on to that moment, like I'm going to bring this up later.
Right. Exactly.
You're observing everything. Like, okay, when does my timing hit? Make sure it's perfectly planned.
Right. And you have to listen to what other people are saying and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. My son is very naturally gifted at comic timing and callbacks and things like that. We work on the comic timing a little bit.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
Not the right time for that, buddy.
Right. And
just wait.
When at a certain age, like when the joke does land, then they say it again and again and again. It's like, okay, the art of the humor is just letting it go and then waiting for your next time,
Just Chill out, my friend.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, he's also 12. So
My brother is 23 and he still does that. So
yeah. That's we were actually just talking. My friend that was here before, we did a show together,
Mhm.
and he said, "I'm wearing my Rock of Ages T-shirt underneath."
Mhm.
I said, "I can't wear mine anymore because my son got to them,
Oh.
and he's 12.
Yeah.
You can imagine. I refuse to wear them anymore."
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Are
Yeah.
you from Columbus originally?
I'm not. I'm from the Cleveland area.
Okay.
I'm from Amherst. It's halfway in between Sandusky and Cleveland, very close to the lake.
That's one I don't know.
Yeah. Lorraine.
Yes.
Okay.
Adam was just from Lorraine.
No way.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yes.
Yeah. We're just like, I mean, I'm maybe a 5-minute drive from Lorraine.
Okay.
Well, my parents are, but.
Right. So you grew up there. Is it
Mhm.
smaller?
It is. It
Okay.
definitely is growing a little bit. That whole
Yeah.
area kind of is. We got a Target in 2007. Yeah,
Target?
yes. And that kind of we've since gotten in the last 3 years, we've gotten a Five Guys, a Chick-fil-A, a Cane's,
Okay.
and a Crumble cookie. So
That's moving
yes,
up.
I know. I came home
Crumble.
and I was like, where are we? Like, this is wild, you know?
I didn't realize that Crumble
Yeah.
Cookie was part of that. Because you see like the Five Below, the Target,
Yes.
there's probably a Lowe's nearby.
Yes,
and-
right next to the Target. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm,
All of
mhm.
those typical
A
shopping.
Starbucks.
Yep.
We went from having a Starbucks in the Target to now we have that one, and across the street a drive-through Starbucks. That's how you know, right?
You've made it.
Yeah, right. But yes, all things considered, we are smaller than
Yeah.
we're not Columbus, you know.
Okay.
But
So how did you end up in the area then?
sure. I went to school at Ohio University,
Okay.
graduated in 2019, and I got a job working at the State House. It's a legislative fellowship position.
Okay.
And so that is a December to December position. So I had a few months to kill, did another internship around home, and
Yeah.
then I came here, and I have
haven't
been here
gone
ever since.
since?
Yeah.
What did you study in school then?
Journalism, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great
So
school for journalism.
yes, yeah. So I
Very
went
good.
wanting to go into broadcasting.
Okay.
I'd been in a broadcasting class in high
Yeah.
school and loved that. I've
Did
always
you want to
loved
do
video.
like radio or television?
Television.
Okay.
Yeah. Steve Hartman.
Mhm.
He's my favorite reporter. I wanted to be him.
Amazing.
Tell feel good stories, whatever.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, that dream was kind of squashed in
Yeah.
college.
Okay.
Without going into all the details,
beat it out of you,
yeah, the way that they ran their broadcasting program, at least at the time,
Mhm.
it was really like juniors and seniors get to do all this stuff, but you have to like cover football and basketball before you can touch news. And I was like, I could not care less about football or basketball. Let me cover the
Mhm.
courthouse or whatever. I'll
Yeah.
sit at the city council meeting on a Monday
Okay.
night, whatever. And they wouldn't let you. That's for upperclassmen. And it's that kind of thing. And I was like, meh.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go to the high school football games and cover that. So anyway, neither here nor there. But
Crazy.
I ended up sticking with journalism, but taking the like strategic communication
Okay.
route, so like PR, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Worked at the State House. I ended up being the deputy comms director for the Senate Dems for almost 3 years.
Is it brutal there?
Is this rolling?
We are rolling.
We
yeah.
are rolling. Yeah. Is this
And
part
not
of the
brutal
conversation?
in a
Yeah.
negative sense, but everything's got to be so high speed and
It was
happening.
without going into too many details,
Yeah.
it was brutal.
Yeah.
And it's hard because like politics has always been something that I've had an interest in, like literally ever since second grade. And
Really?
there was a day in second grade where I was like, I want to be the first woman president, and I just kind of ran with that.
Amazing.
And working that intimately in
Yeah.
politics and seeing kind of the inner workings and stuff, it was making me feel very jaded. And I was like, wow, I am way too young
Mhm.
to be this jaded. You know, I need to be involved, but in a different capacity. And that's how this job at KYC opened up. And it's an advocacy job. I also love working with kids. There's communications involved with it. Like it's the perfect trifecta of all the things I
that's
love to do. Yeah.
What was the turning point in second grade?
I
Did something
don't
happen?
remember. I know that would have been the 2004 election.
Okay.
And I remember us doing some sort of like elementary school election where we were
Yeah.
voting like,
Right.
you know,
In a box.
Carrie Bush. Yeah, exactly. And I think alongside that, we were having some sort of government lesson. I just very distinctly remember my teacher telling us that there had never been a female president and me being like, well, I'm going to be the first woman president. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I raised my hand and I told her I'm going to be the first woman president. And she took to that. And then all my classmates took to that. So I was like, gosh, okay, this is a thing, right?
Which is great.
Yeah,
that
right,
exactly.
Correct.
That's amazing.
She could have been like, well, good luck, kid,
like,
right? But she let me believe that I could do that. Now, did I ever think then that 20 years later that still would be a possibility? No, right? Like, it's very wild. In fact, my mom was saying, like, when I was a kid, she's like, well, I hope you're not the first woman president. And I was offended by that because I was like, how dare you not believe that? And she's like, well, no, I hope that somebody else comes before you. Yeah, because I still have another 9 years before I'm even old enough to run, But who knows? So
you got time.
Right.
You go for Senate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I always remember hearing that, like hitting those milestones in life. When I turned 25, I was like, I can run for Senate. I wouldn't.
Right. But
and
the
then
possibility
I turned
is there.
35, and today I was looking at the young professionals group. I'm too old. I was like,
really?
Oh, well, sad face.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
No more milestones except AARP. I have that coming.
That's true. And you can get some serious discounts.
Apparently, but they sometimes send it out too early from what I've heard.
Yeah.
It's a little heartbreaking.
Yeah. My dad started getting that way earlier than his actual retirement eligibility.
Just wait.
Yeah.
So are your folks still up north then?
They are.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you do this stuff at the State House. How did you find yourself with KYC then? Because it started, I did my research.
Yeah.
2016, is that when you moved into the facility or was it a thing before then?
So actually 2024 is our 30th anniversary.
Oh my gosh.
So KYC started in 1994. And I'm going to butcher the history and I really need to brush up on it. But I know that it started off because a couple community members, they had been working with LGBT youth who had been kicked out of their homes for whatever reason. And they had kind of provided an impromptu kind of shelter, like, hey, I come on in, stay in our home.
Space.
Yeah. And so after working with some of those young folks, they said, like, okay, there's a need for this in our community. We need something to support queer and trans youth. And so in 1994, they started like a call line type thing that was run. I want to say it was run in the basement of some other it might have been Stonewall, I don't know, but it was like it didn't have its own place. And so it was a number that youth could call just to have someone to talk to and have that support. And over the years, it's grown into being what it is now. And along the way, we've been in different locations. So as you said, in 2016, I believe, is when we moved into our current facility. We're very close to the main branch of the library downtown. And we're best known for our drop-in center, which is kind of what that call line has evolved into, is a space where Tuesdays through Fridays after school, young people can come, hang out, play games. We have our different affinity groups, so Gender Scope or QPOC, so folks can meet with others who share similar identities. But we also have things like D&D, movie night on Fridays. Every Friday is pizza and movie night. We have art club. I know, it's, I've gotten to watch a lot of movies that I don't think I otherwise would have watched. But we're all about the community. There's always art going on. So that's a little bit in our drop-in space. We also have our wellness center, which is like our newest addition. That's the same property, just the building kind of right next door on the property. And that is what houses our behavioral health and community-based wellness teams. So we're able to offer therapy at no cost to young people. We're able to offer housing to folks between the ages of 18 to 24 who are in need of that. Now, granted, there's like a limitation, right? We can't just say like every young person.
It's a party.
Right. So there's always a wait list, but we do offer those at no cost to folks. And that program is our newest program and only continues to grow.
That's amazing. And thinking too, like, because I'm old, 94.
Right.
It still wasn't talked about.
Right.
Being queer was not really discussed. And I was thinking about that this morning, knowing that you were coming in today, of just like, we didn't talk about that. And it was still, unfortunately, kind of a joke at the time. And it was being made a joke to be queer and to that you were so different. And there was, it just didn't happen where you were.
Right.
And I grew up in Gahanna, so it wasn't that small. We had, 600 kids in our class. It was a pretty big little city, but it just wasn't something that was talked about. And to think how much better off would people have been in our class that were struggling with these things that didn't have a name at the time.
Right.
Like in 94, I was in school in 94.
Right.
And I had no idea that anything would have existed.
Well, and I think to your point of like having a space to talk about it, so much, and we could dive into the political conversation or whatever, but so much of this fear that has existed back in the 90s and 80s,
absolutely.
it's always that, kids might find out about being gay and they might become gay. I'll use myself as a prime example. I knew what being gay meant. I don't necessarily remember learning what gay was.
Right.
I kind of do, but I just feel like that I've always known like what that is, right? Nevertheless, it still took me until I was almost 22 to realize that I was gay, right? I knew, and I would always feel so envious. I'm like, gosh, I wish I was gay. That would be so nice, right? And then it took me that long to be like, oh, wait, that's me, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Most people like know that it exists. They don't have to be sheltered from this, experience this identity, right? But in contrary, they learn about that identity and they see themselves in that and they're able to thrive, right? They're able to have an answer. Why do I feel different? How come I can't relate to my peers in this way? How come I feel a little bit off because, I don't like, the clothes that I'm expected to wear, the people I'm expected to take to prom, right? And then they see this identity, they're able to see themselves reflected in that, and that worry goes away and they're able to spend that mental energy on something else, whether that's their studies or whether that's their extracurriculars or their relationships with their friends and family. Because I can tell you that when you're questioning your identity, when you're questioning your sexuality, your gender, that is all consuming. You could be trying to study for an exam and you can't because all you can think about is this thing that's weighing on you. And when you're able to give name to that, when you're able to articulate that and be supported, that's not an issue anymore. Suddenly that's like, okay, I'm gay and I'm studying for my biology test or whatever.
And I need a glass of water, excuse me.
Exactly, right. You can meet all those other needs once your core identity needs are met, right? And so I think to your point about, in 94 that wasn't really talked about. Now it's like, in all of these decades that have passed, there's still that like vilification of, we can't let kids know about what it's like to be queer or trans, right? And we know that it exists. We might as well.
It's there.
Yeah.
Let them identify with it.
Right. And let them be in a space where they can thrive.
Right. And I think, I won't go into much detail, but I do have an LGBTQIA plus kid. And I think, going through the journey as a parent was sort of just like, they just need to be seen and heard and understood. And this is what they relate to. Not my job to understand it.
Sure.
It's not up to me. I just need to love them. Like that was my job given to me as a parent.
Exactly. Right.
And I'm thankful to have grown up, especially in the theater, because the theater brings out all personalities, all kinds, and provides a space of empathy and love that isn't real prominent in a lot of other job professions.
Right.
But and I've worked with students from the beginning. I've worked with students now for like 12 years, especially high schoolers who are going through these changes. And I think that was the biggest blessing for me with my own kid, was to have traveled that journey with other kids and their parents, and to see how the parents especially dealt with, well, this is what my son is saying.
Right.
I don't understand it. And like.
Right. And identity is ebb and flow. So and I think that's a huge misconception too, especially with like gender affirming care conversations, is a lot of people say, well, this person at age 12, 13, 14, 15, they don't know enough, that identity could change, whatever. But it's about affirming them where they're at. And if that identity changes over time, great, affirm them where they're at. Yeah, exactly. And, they to not be affirmed, whether that's not recognizing a name or pronouns or even just saying, no, you don't know yourself well enough yet to know that you're gay or trans. Like when you actually affirm them, we talked about this earlier, your ability to thrive in other capacities only goes up.
Live life.
Yeah, exactly. But like, mental health wise, that little bit of affirmation, what seems like a little bit of affirmation is tremendous as far as ensuring that their mental health is on the right track too.
It's scary. And I met with a group of students this past weekend, and we talked about some of the stuff they face. And I told them flat out, like, yeah, I'm a mom, I'm an old lady. I don't understand how you guys deal with the stuff that you go through. Like kids these days. Let me sound old.
Yeah, no.
But like students and what they have to go through now is huge.
Sure.
I don't think we ever had the amount of mental harshness that the students go through now.
Right.
And the stuff that they deal with. I don't know what it is, social media or just life in general. But it's insane how much things have changed.
Even like I grew up with social media. I mean, I got social
Do you have
media.
your MySpace page?
I didn't, but I did join Twitter when I was 11 behind my mom's back because I wasn't allowed to have a phone or Facebook or whatever. So I made a Twitter.
Was it like,
you know what I did with it?
Do it.
I tweeted at my favorite author. It was really scandalous, right? But I was like, I love your books. Lauren Miracle. She hasn't really published a whole lot recently, but she's best known for like teenager, young adult.
Did she ever respond?
She did, yeah.
She the one about, she did like a teeth?
Yes, yeah.
I remember teeth were on the cover.
Yes, like the smiley face emoji ones. Yeah, I never read those ones, but her Winnie Years series I devoured in middle school. So I made this Twitter account to tweet at her. But anyway, I grew up with social media. I made an Instagram account basically a week after the app was developed and released to the world, right?
Yeah.
So I had these accounts all throughout high school, but it was a different social media world even despite that because, you know, everyone talks about the algorithm, all this, you know, all of these tools that now exist on social media to kind of keep you sucked in, keep showing you content. And part of that content too is political content. And so people are seeing this and that the weight of these issues is bogging people down. And not to say that like teenagers shouldn't pay attention to this because people, you know, it's good to be civically aware and engaged, but also when a lot of these conversations are targeting your identity or when you're hearing stories about school shootings and maybe not at your own school but elsewhere, climate change, all of these issues that directly impact you as a young person.
And will continue to.
Exactly. And when people aren't given the tools, you know, no one's teaching you a class in high school on media literacy and what to do with this information, right? So that's that.
What a good class. That needs to happen.
Exactly.
I hope that's
like in addition to social studies, right? Like you could be learning, you know, in your government class, media literacy. How do we decipher information that's being handed to us?
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
I love that.
We'll see.
I can't teach it, but I love it.
Right. Maybe someday.
Maybe someday. So KYC provides. First off, where did Kaleidoscope come from? Just the beautiful combination of colors and
if I had to guess, that would be I would say just from the beautiful colors and how, you know,
everything just
it all
combines and makes
into this beautiful piece of art. Yeah. I'll have to. That's a great question. I'm going to have to ask the higher powers that be. Yeah.
But I do like that. And y'all serve kids 12 to 22, is that correct?
So our programming at our drop-in center is primarily for ages 12 to 20.
Okay.
So you can come on your 12th birthday and the day before your 21st is your last day. We do have I know, right? Yeah. I've watched a couple youth age out and I'm kind of like, man, your 21st birthday is an exciting time, but that's kind of sad, you know? But we do have programming once a month for folks between the ages of 8 to 11 and parents as well, guardians. Yeah. And then we also have programming once a month for 18 to 24. So some of our older youth who may have aged out of traditional programming, they can come back and hang out.
Because what a home to find.
Right.
That's amazing.
And our other programs like our community-based wellness, that serves up to age 24 as well. But yeah, I think, you know, so much – when we think about queer spaces, a lot of times people think of bars, and that's historically where you know community has grown and evolved, as in queer bars. For people under the drinking age, we know that historically people under the age of 21 who are queer go into these queer bars to try to find that community and to try to find, especially if a person has been kicked out of their home. That's where they seek community and have historically done so. So I think having a space like KYC, that third space that's not school or work or home, a space that they can go, let their guard down and substance free, right? You know, and it's just a place where, And something that I wish that I had is somebody who's not within that age demographic too, you know? So I think it's a really remarkable space that we're able to provide.
So when kids are in that 8 to 12 range, you do allow parents to be a part of that, just, I mean, because they're young.
Exactly. Yeah. And that programming definitely looks different than it does with, say, high schoolers. It's, you know, coloring and that kind of thing. But it's also a time for parents to come and have conversation with each other. Because like you said, you know, their young person comes out and it's like, wow, this is, you know,
what do I do?
news to me, and I want to support you, but I want to make sure I'm doing the right things, right? So we have that. And then once a month, we also have another parents and guardians night. A virtual option, so people statewide, anyone could tune in and be part of that conversation.
I know that was big for me, especially was not just having worked with students, which is great, but those are like, that's a different ball game,
right? With
younger folks, but talking with other parents who'd gone through it and hearing that it was okay to struggle with it as a parent, like not really know what the right responses would
Exactly.
be,
Right. Because you want to say it. You want to say the right things, but then there's always the pressure of like, am I saying it in the right way? Am I using the
Yeah.
correct terminology?
Right.
Is what I'm saying outdated? But really, the biggest terms you need to know are like, okay, thanks for telling me. I love you. I support you. Tell me what we can do to grow from here.
Yeah.
Like, tell me how I can support you too.
And I started to learn too how to apologize when I didn't do it right.
Sure.
Didn't say it right. Like, forgive me. I'm sorry.
Right.
Working on it.
Right.
I'll get there. I'm slow.
Right.
But
and sometimes those words can mean the world,
Yeah.
you know, to have that admission of like, I know that you as the young person, like you're the expert in your own identity in life. You only you as an individual know the conversations going on in your head, like the thoughts and reflections that you're having, you know, as a parent. I'm not a parent, but I can imagine
Take
it would
your
be
time.
hard. Yeah, I imagine it would be hard. No, not anytime soon. But I imagine it would be hard to see this individual who you've raised and like, you know, who you grew for a period of time, right? You have this vision of what this person is going to be like. And when that deviates in some way, I know like in my experience too, that was something that I had to face with my parents, was just like, oh, they had this vision in their mind and all of a sudden that was different, right? And that's, you can't fault people for that. What you can fault them for is if they're not willing to evolve that perception, you know?
Yeah. I think that like where I'm always blessed to have born when I was born, because I'm an 80s baby, but 90s kid.
Yeah.
And I think that there was so much of a change that was happening. And so especially the folks that were born like, I don't know, 3 to 5 years above and below my year, we were the out of the digital out of the analog into the digital. So we saw a little bit of everything. And I just find that there's a little bit more apathy and a little more like, okay, hold on. New information. Let me process.
Yeah, sure.
But okay.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, not overall, of course, but I mean, living in a city has certainly helped.
Sure.
Working in the theater has certainly helped, but I know that's not the case with extended family.
Sure.
And I'm sure, do you get a lot of students that, I say students, I'm used to working with students. You get a lot of kids that just have no support in any direction.
Yeah, we have a fair distribution of levels of support. We have some people who find their way to KYC from the bus and they get there and, you know, we hang out with them. And some people are like, you know, when my parent calls, if my parent contacts, whatever, like use this name and pronouns instead of what I go by here, you know? And so we have to be aware of that. And then we have other parents who drop their youth off and they hang out in the parking lot and then pick them up when it's done. You know what I mean? Because they're making that far drive a couple times a week. So all different levels. But I will say too, in addition to our parent support groups, KYC also does trainings for individuals or for corporations or for employee groups or organizations, whatever the case is. We can have either an online training that's available or an in-person for a larger group. And these are great for parents or teachers or anybody who's like, I really want to learn more, but maybe I'm afraid to ask. Or I really want to learn more and don't know where to begin because there's so much information. At kycohio.org/education, you can find all of that information.
Nicely done.
Yeah. You can find all of that. And I think that's really helpful because a lot of people are like, oh, well, of course I know what LGBT stands for, but QIA and what, you know, when's the appropriate time to use which term and pronoun use, that kind of thing. It's a good baseline and it's okay to admit like, okay, I don't know everything. Right.
Oh no, I know very little. But I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that too, that the one that's the expert is the one that is living in my house.
Right.
You know, that I can go to my child and be like, all right, help me out with this.
Right. Well, right, because you could know everything about what it's like to be transgender in theory. Like you can learn all the terminology or whatever, and then you talk to this individual and maybe that individual doesn't vibe with a certain term.
Sure.
Or maybe they don't want to use the term trans or queer or whatever it is. So getting to know individuals and talking to them and, you know, growing through those conversations is always helpful too.
And it's not my life. I mean, I think that's part of it too, is like just respecting that this is somebody else's life. I'm not here to understand every piece and part. I have a 12-year-old boy that smells terrible. I don't get him.
Right, exactly.
I probably never will. But like, I'll support him.
Yeah.
I'll also encourage him to wear deodorant.
Right,
often.
yes, showers are good.
We're working on that. Hopefully we'll get there. Somebody else has got to tell him. I'm waiting for that somebody to pop into his life and tell him deodorant is a good thing.
Yeah, somebody who's not his mom. Yeah. Yep.
he even told a friend, he had a friend over and he's like, my mom always hugs me. And she's like, did you put deodorant on? I'm like, because you smell.
Right,
But
right. And that friend probably
yeah, probably gets
is
the same
dealing with
thing
the
at
same
home.
deodorant. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They'll learn.
So what has it been like for you working in an organization with youth and potentially, students who are struggling significantly with where they are in life and how they're feeling? And
I think one thing that's hard, we talked earlier in the conversation about what it was like for me to be at the State House when I was working there with the legislature. And that was difficult for me because there's so many issues that arise that are affecting Ohioans, affecting me adjacently, right? You know what I mean? Like with things like gun legislation, like ideally, fingers crossed, I will never find myself in a situation where somebody pulls out a gun, right? But we live in exactly right. We live in the United States, and anything is possible. So, but I can think to myself like, okay, that maybe won't impact me, right? You could try to distance yourself, and that's not necessarily a healthy way to approach it either. But you do what you can. With the current legislation around gender affirming care and what students can hear in schools and where they can go to the bathroom and how they can identify and all of these things directly targeting them, working with young people, because it's that dichotomy where I spend a lot of my days at the State House talking with adults and, being in the room where things happen. And then immediately I'll go back to KYC and I'll be talking to the youth who their lives will fundamentally change by this. Exactly. It's not a matter of like, will I find myself in a grocery store where there's somebody with a gun? It's like this young person's like, I am trans and I don't know how I will go to the bathroom if this bill passes, period. And so that it's both uplifting in a way to go and actually like talk to the young people, because you're at the State House. It would be very easy for you to feel like, oh, all trans people are villains, and because there's that like othering that happens, right? And then you go and hang out with these trans kids who are just like goofing off, playing D&D, like they just want to have fun, they just want to be loved, and being able to be in that space with that youthful energy. It's both uplifting in that way and also incredibly disheartening, because you develop these relationships with people and then you just only want the best for them, and then to look them in the eye and be like, I don't know how you're going to go to the bathroom. Like that's how do you tell a kid that?
I know.
Ugh,
this world. This is, I know this is kind of like a very odd question or just too out there, but do you think that the challenge with the acceptance overall sits more in what people feel is this is just the way it should be, or is it more fear? Because I always feel like it's fear-based. The folks that are against any transgender rights that should be in place that are fighting against is like, what are you afraid of? It feels like it's set in fear to me.
Yes, I would agree. Well, I think a lot of it is rooted in just people trying to get reelected and finding the next issue that they could bite on, right?
Right.
That being the root, then they're able to tell these stories that are rooted in fear and can get other people afraid. People who might not know any trans people or might not realize they know any trans people. Because, you hear the people who come to testify against things like House Bill 68, which would take away trans youth, their ability to access gender affirming care and play sports. People who are coming to testify on this come from all ends of the political spectrum.
Okay.
And a lot of them have had their minds changed because they met a trans person, because their kid came out as trans, because, their neighbor did, their whoever. They took the time to hear their stories and to listen, and they realize, oh, you're the same person who I loved 5 minutes ago before you came out to me, and you're able to empathize a little bit more. Yeah. And I think, that fear, it goes away when you realize this thing is not so scary, right?
And it's not very far away.
Right.
If you open your eyes.
Right. Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And I can't take credit for this quote, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but something that's said often is like, if you don't know anybody who's gay, it's because you haven't made yourself accepting enough to, or like you haven't proven that you're accepting enough for them to come out to you. You probably know someone who's gay. Same thing with somebody who's trans. Like if you don't know someone who's trans, like you probably do. They just don't feel safe enough to come out to you. So I think just having that willingness to open up your mind and realize these are kids we're talking about. Like they're teenagers.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons, like, not putting on deodorant. There's a lot of reasons to be afraid of teenagers.
If
you know what I mean?
Tell me why he doesn't wear it.
Exactly.
Please.
Right. Like there's a lot, and I say that with a joking, teenagers are teenagers, but like, there's a lot of reasons, like maybe they're talking back to you or maybe they're not wearing deodorant or whatever, but like fundamentally disliking them because of just who they are, like an identity that they hold is just so unbelievably wrong, right?
Crazy. Well, and to have them now, because honestly, like 13 and above is sort of my happy place to work with students.
Yeah.
Not that kids aren't great, but I've done that.
Yeah.
I prefer to work with the ones who have their mindset a little bit differently and have, grown a little bit, asked deeper questions, are looking for themselves in the process. And that's, as an acting coach, like that's my happy place to work with them, because that instills something, whether or not they go into it, but the questions they ask will lead them into things of their adulthood. And I love seeing the growth on that. But yeah, it is scary. It's a weird time in life, but it's like the worst time in life to turn your back on a kid, though, either.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, whether you're queer or trans or straight or cisgender, like however you identify, you can think back to being in middle school and high school, and maybe like most people, you're like, you couldn't pay me enough to go back then, right? Because your body is going through so many changes, and you're working things out with friends, and we can all think of the horrors
It was awful.
of middle school.
Oh, yeah.
And then to have on top of that, like you feel different than your peers. Yeah. And you feel like you don't quite fit in, and maybe you don't know why, or maybe you do know why and you're not sure if you'll be accepted. Like, can you imagine being in that space and then not having a supportive family, or to not have supportive peers or teachers, or to have supportive teachers, but the teachers are now being told by law to not support you, or maybe they're afraid, So there's all these factors. It's like, why can't we just all agree that we need to make teenagers' lives a little bit easier, right? It's hard enough as is.
Take yourself back to that moment. Remember that awful middle school?
Right.
Jeez. Do you feel, and I know this is, again, kind of a broad question and it's hard to be specific because we don't know every area, but do you find that schools are doing well with advocacy for LGBTQIA youth, or is it just dependent upon where that school is located?
Yeah, unfortunately, it definitely is dependent on the district.
Okay.
And there are some districts who are doing a tremendous job at implementing inclusive policies.
Yeah.
There are some schools that have implemented inclusive policies, received a little bit of pushback, and immediately withdrawn what they've said. And you know what? We're backtracking, right? There are some schools that have gone the complete opposite and implemented exclusive policies preemptively, because maybe they're anticipating legislation coming down and they're like, well, let's just get ahead of the game and let's do this. Or maybe they've been waiting to do it anyway and now it's just their chance. So it really does depend on the district. And that's so hard because I
don't have a choice on that all the time.
Right, exactly. And like young people, it's not like they have a say in where they go to school in most cases. Like this is just the district you're enrolled in, and that's where you're going to go. Or, because it's hard when you have a teacher you don't like and you just have to deal with them for a little while. And maybe you don't like the class, maybe you're not into calculus or whatever. But when that teacher is like being told to disrespect you in some way, right? It makes it so much harder.
And when you're trying to find yourself,
yeah,
those are you want to go to the adults. That's what we were always told. Go to an adult when you need help. But what if the adult's like the worst person you can go to?
I actually had a teacher in high school, Mark Lowry. He's actually the Ohio 2024 Teacher of the Year. Yeah, Gahanna now.
Yeah, Gahanna, sorry.
But he actually taught up in Amherst at the time.
Oh my gosh,
so I had the chance to have him.
Okay.
So shameless plug, go Mark Lowry.
Go Mark,
but he, the very first day in his broadcasting class, which was a 2-year program, before we ever touched a camera, before we ever had the opportunity to tell a story, he sat us down and, went over the classroom rules. And what stood out to me so much is that was the first time that I had a teacher say, like, you will not use these slurs in my class, period. You use them, you're out of the class. And it was something like, you will never use the word gay in a derogatory manner. Like, if I hear you say, that's so gay, out, no questions asked, right? And same with, like, the R word, the N word, like all these things, right? And that stuck with me because even though I didn't realize I was gay at the time, I was like, wow, I have never had a teacher say that, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about inclusive policies for schools, we're not asking teachers to be experts in the subject matter. We're not asking them to all hang up rainbow flags and demand that all of their students change their pronouns by the end of the year, right? But what they should be able to do is just that, say, you're not going to disrespect your fellow peers, right? And I'll respect you the same,
That's a pretty simple rule to follow.
Exactly. It's not that hard, but...
Oh, wait, that's the golden rule.
Exactly. Right, right. So it's things like that, taking away schools' ability to do that, or maybe making schools feel like they can't do things like that. And again, all we're asking is for them to follow the golden rule, as you just said. So it doesn't have to be profound, but those simple measures really do make a big impact.
And probably, too, for a student who had heard slurs before.
Sure.
To hear that from a teacher of like, I'm safe here.
Yeah.
And I know that's such a huge part of developmental abilities for a youth, especially in the teenage years as they're developing. I need to feel safe.
Right.
The hierarchy of needs, that's a big one.
Exactly.
There. I mean, the food, the shelter, the safe.
Right.
And
that's why spaces like, I know using that example, like the TV studio, that was my safe space. Like it felt like coming home when I was there. I, in my brain, often liken KYC to the TV studio. Like KYC is somebody's TV studio. It's their place where they can come, let their guard down, just relax, be themselves. They don't have to worry about what else is going on. Because we got that. We'll take care of that. We'll make sure that the shelves are stocked with food, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you can just go play D&D and we got everything else.
Y'all are feeding teenagers.
Right. I know. Yeah. Don't let word get out.
Donations.
Yeah. Honestly, we always do.
I cannot imagine the food that flies off the shelves.
Fruit snacks, Welch's fruit snacks are
Is that the number one?
They're like gold. Honestly,
Really?
they get on the shelf and they're gone immediately.
How are what's the goldfish supply like?
Goldfish, they're good. We like flavor blasted goldfish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
right. That's right.
The other is just
right.
The weaker cousin.
Exactly.
Of the
yeah.
Flavor Blast.
If you really are starving, you can eat that. But flavor blasted ramen,
Flamin' Hot, or the Takis.
Yeah.
Spicy things seem to be.
Yes. Yeah. Like the extra spicy ramen. I don't know the brand or whatever because I can't handle it. I'm a wimp with spice, but other people like it. It goes off the shelf.
Yeah.
Capri Sun.
Still?
Yes, Capri Sun. Yeah. And honestly, starting to work at KYC, I had a Capri Sun for the first time in like the better part of 2 decades. And I was like, whoa. Oh, that's exactly the same. It's like your brain tingles awake and all of a sudden it's 2005 and I'm in elementary school again.
Still sweet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's brutally sweet.
We were only allowed to have them when we went camping. So that was like a specific camping drink.
Nice.
That was, for some reason, Mom let up on the sugar stuff when we were camping.
Right.
But I don't know if I could handle it now.
It's intense. Although as a kid, I thought the Capri Suns were much bigger than they actually are. They're really only the size of your hand.
They might have shrunk though.
That's
they did
possible.
that with a lot of things.
That's true.
I don't know.
That's true. But yeah, it is a lot. Afterward, you're like, I need water. You dilute this. Exactly.
The cloying.
Yes, exactly. It kind of burns your throat. There's so much
sugar.
What
do the kids like to do most when they're there for just hangout time? A lot of games.
Yeah, we have a Wii and we have a Nintendo Switch that they play with still. Like it's your Just Dance from 2010 and they're still rocking it. Yeah. D&D is such a hit on Friday nights. We have a couple different campaigns. So every other week, one group of youth, they have their campaign and then the following week it's the next campaign. And even those who it's not their campaign, they'll come and watch the other one. Yeah. Big hit. And honestly, just sitting around and talking. Like we have different rooms at KYC and you could pop in and they're having a conversation about something bizarre and obscure and then walk into the next room and it's the same, so there's always a new thing that's being discussed. Art is huge. We have a lot of talented artists. Yeah. There are so many people who, when they're not playing D&D, they're drawing their characters or they're sketching out something. Everyone's like, look at what I just drew. I'm like, you just drew that? That didn't take you months to
my kid
sketch.
Is that way.
It's amazing.
Yep. I know. And it's like, did you look at something?
Yeah, you didn't trace
that came out of your
this?
knowledge? Like, how?
Right.
I can't draw a stick figure to save my life.
Right. It's amazing.
Do they do music programs? Is there any music type stuff that kids like to do?
So we actually just recently kind of got rid of some of the stuff that we had physically in the space. We had a piano for a while. We actually have a keyboard. There's always somebody plunking out something on the keyboard. Yeah. Guitar, there's always somebody strumming something. Usually on Friday nights too. You can hear it wafting and you're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So definitely with the artistic students, we also have the musically gifted student youth as well. So it's very cool.
That's so much fun. I'd love to do improv if they ever want to.
Honestly,
do an improv night.
I was having that thought as well.
Yeah.
We'll talk because we have a summer program for young people, our summer institute.
Yeah.
And that's for 4 weeks in July going into August. And definitely that would be a leadership activity. Yeah.
Sure.
For sure.
I love too that there's a space because I know for any artistic weirdo kid, there's not always a haven for that.
Yeah.
A place where you can go because it's such a competitive world. And
Right. And there's the pressure to have to be the best at everything you do. And that's the case with anybody involved in any hobby ever, right? It's like you can't just have a hobby because you like to do it. You have to be the best at it. And sometimes it's good to just
You don't want to be on the JV of anything.
Right. Exactly.
it's hard enough to be a kid, but
Right.
to be competitive. And then especially too, when we live in this world where everything is toted on social media.
Oh, for sure.
Somebody's always better than you. I mean, which is true.
Right.
A life lesson we have to learn, but it'd be nice to be really good at something for a while.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to be known for it.
Well, bringing it back to the legislative conversation, that's something that I think about all the time when we're talking about trans athletes and ability to participate in sports, right? Because so many people are like, oh, if we let this trans woman play sports, she's going to beat all of these cis women. And it's like, okay, she might, right? And that's like all a part of being involved in sports is somebody's going to beat you, even if she didn't play on the team or against you or whatever. Somebody probably would beat you regardless, you know what I mean? And so that need to be the best at everything, it also then starts to spin into the like, well, we have to make it fair for everyone and we have to cut down. It's like
it's back to the participation.
Right, exactly. It's the participation trophy, which, can we all enjoy a participation trophy?
Sure.
Yeah. Sometimes I think, when I was a kid playing soccer, I earned that participation trophy just by showing up.
God bless you. I never even played.
It took enough for me to get out of the car on a rainy day and go out on the field. I earned that trophy, But, making it so that like, oh, everyone
it's not.
It's that argument. It's like sometimes you could just do something because it's fun and it's good for your mental health. You don't have to win everything you do.
Nope. And if you enjoy it, if it makes you happy and it brings you peace and brings you some sort of joy and accomplishment.
Exactly.
There it is.
Right.
Yay, you did it.
You meet friends. You enjoy being part of a team. Like, that's all part of it.
What's your favorite part of KYC?
My favorite part of KYC. I love when a young person comes to KYC for the first time and they're always a little bit nervous when they first walk in the door because you're nervous anytime you go to a new place for the first time. I was nervous coming here for the first time because I didn't know where parking
well, also, that didn't help.
Yeah, exactly. But, you're nervous going to a new place and then to show up in this space filled with, people who have been coming here for years in some cases.
Snacks
right, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And you show up and they're a little bit nervous. And then when all of a sudden you see them sit down with a group of people who say, hey, we got a seat over here. Do you want to come join us? And you see that click and you see them start to like chip away. I think of the Campbell's soup commercial, the old one from it might be from the early 2000s, but it's not a recent commercial where the kid's playing outside in the snow.
Yeah,
and he comes in as a snowman and he melts down after eating the chicken soup. That's the way that I see it. When people come into KYC, they're a little bit cold and nervous and then they melt away.
Yeah.
And the soup is the community there, right? That's my
so
favorite part of it.
And kids need that so bad. Adults need that
exactly.
too.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Yeah,
we need that space as well because we don't do that as often as we should as adults. So sit here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why I do love doing improv here is that we can provide that space. Like here, come play with us.
Exactly.
That's literally what we're saying. Come play.
Right.
But we don't get that in business spaces and even social spaces or like the number of times that you see people will reach out on social media like, is there any groups of people that just hang out? Like, I just want to get to know. And it's such a big thing that they're asking that I love that they do that. People don't want to do that.
We need community so bad. Yeah. I mean, that sounds unbelievably cliche, and I think we all experienced that during the pandemic when we realized, we can't be around people all the time. Like, gosh, what I wouldn't give to be in a crowded elevator right now, And I think, having a space where community is just like, when you're in high school, that everyone was with roughly the same age as you, give or take 3 years, right? You go to college, same thing. Right. You spend your whole life in these spaces where community is kind of part of the deal, right? And then you're thrust off into the real world and you're like, gosh, where do I find friends?
Where's the weirdos?
Yeah, so we need spaces like that where people can come together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's when we always talk about it with my younger one who's in 7th grade, like the worst of the worst.
Sure.
And we do tell him flat out, like, this is it, man. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you got to go through it.
Yeah.
But it gets better.
It does.
And when you find your weirdos, that's when it hits.
Yeah.
And I love seeing the change in kids. I had one student that I worked with in children's theater, and I said, what's a time in your life where you felt full because of where you were? And he said, going to children's theater.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because nobody at my school understands me. But when I come here, like I can be myself. That was me in children's choir.
Yeah.
Like I found my weirdos, luckily, in my middle school years and was able to move that into the rest of my life. But, especially if you're going through changes and challenges where you're not the norm, whatever the norm is these days. I don't know that there is a norm anymore, But to find your weirdos, and I always joke about that, but like, it's an important thing when you finally do.
Yeah.
I love seeing my eldest kiddo finding their space in school. It's not always great, but they found the theater kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Shocker.
You have to find your group.
I'm like, find another career. This one doesn't pay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I'm so thankful that there are spaces like that, like what you guys are providing for youth of all different walks of life.
Mhm.
To be like, come sit on the couch, have a Capri Sun with us.
Literally, that's what it is. Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yep.
Oh, that's so great. So if somebody, if a parent is looking for help on that, how do they go to you for assistance for
that? Visit kycohio.org.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is there. We have our calendar up to date. We have, if you're looking to get involved as a volunteer, if you want to learn more as a parent, if you want to participate in any of the educational trainings that we have or the online courses, if you're looking to donate, anything related to KYC.
Do that.
Right? Shameless plug.
Donate.
We are always accepting fruit snacks.
We'll take your money and fruit snacks.
Yes. That's the hub to go, especially if you're a parent looking. We get a lot of people. I'm always at events where I'm tabling and passing out information. And we get so many parents who are like, I really want my kid to come to you, but they're a little bit apprehensive.
Yeah.
Have your child follow us on social media. We're on TikTok and Instagram and all that. Sometimes it's helpful to just kind of see a little bit online before you set foot in the space. But
that's how they work.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I work too, So all the resources are on there. You can also, reach out to info@kycohio.org.
Okay.
I'll also give my email address, Mallory, MALLORY @kycohio.org.
I love the name Mallory. I have to say that too. I was a Babysitters Club advocate growing up.
Yes. And I read the Babysitters Club a little bit, probably 10 years later.
Did you read was it a graphic novel by that point?
I never read the graphic novel. So I have
You
cousins.
have the books,
I have cousins that are about your age based on what you've described for your age.
I'm 22.
Yeah, right. And so they gave me all of their books, and that's what I read.
Okay.
And
did you connect with one of the girls?
Absolutely, Mallory.
You did? Okay.
Mallory is such a rare name, all things considered, that I didn't always have.
Yeah.
But I think in actuality, Christy.
You are Christy.
Yeah, Christy for sure.
I never really clicked with one.
I always wanted to be a Claudia, though.
I did too.
She was so cool.
She was so cool.
And her outfits, I tried to recreate the outfits, but the problem was I was not in 5th grade in 1992, right? So I'm trying to recreate these fashions in 2007. No, I could not do it.
There were not enough scarves in the world.
It was not cool enough.
She was always cool. I was probably more of a Dawn.
I was going to say, I don't know if it was the blonde hair or the vibe.
Oh, none of this is real. But I
Dawn.
liked Dawn enough, but she was just kind of chill.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be Claudia, though.
Yes.
She was just so cool.
Yeah.
Never Marianne, though.
Yeah.
I'm not a Marianne.
Yeah, poor Marianne. She was always, the baby.
She had Logan, though.
Yeah, she did.
She found Logan.
I'm really
on.
glad that Ann M. Martin gave Marianne that,
the quiet one, the boyfriend.
Exactly. Have you watched the Babysitters Club series on Netflix?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's your homework.
Good?
It is really well done.
Okay.
That helped get me through the pandemic because I think the first series came out that summer. Or
Did
the
they
first
follow the
season.
books?
To a T.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and they modernize it just a little bit, enough that you're like, okay, this plausibly takes place in 2020, but not enough that it's it is so true to the storyline.
Oh, I love
that.
Mm-hmm. I did watch, my pandemic show was Pen 15.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because that was me. I literally texted a best friend on the episode where they were doing AOL.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Instant Messenger. It's like, did somebody record us during a sleepover?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to us.
Isn't that fun when you
I will have to watch that. Yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm.
That was our car road trip.
Yeah.
We would save a book for Kansas, specifically. We drove from Ohio to Colorado.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Kansas is like a ridiculously dead 6-hour drive.
Uh-huh.
So we'd always save one Babysitter Club book for that drive.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that.
I had smart parents.
Yeah.
Who wanted us to shut up during road trips.
Yep. That's awesome.
And then for youth, social media would probably be a really good way to just kind of find out information.
Yeah. We are everywhere at KYC Ohio.
Okay.
That's a great place to find information about programs that are happening or if we have any like special events coming up. A lot of times, our programming, because of where we're located, it's kind of limited to Central Ohio. But like if you're a young person living up in Cleveland or Toledo or Dayton or wherever, we also have our GSA network. So if you're involved in your school's GSA, Gender Sexuality Alliance, or Pride Club or whatever it's called at your school, you can actually connect in with our GSA network, and you can be part of that network and connect with others throughout the state. So there's ways to get involved even if you're not here in Central Ohio.
Love that.
Yeah.
And if people want to donate,
kycohio.org/donate. /donate. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep.
Is there anything that y'all are in need of like right now that we can put a call to action for?
Yeah, we have our resource room, which is really cool. Anyone, we don't card you at the door. If you are in need of something or want something, you can come to our resource room, and we're always taking things like deodorant or other toiletries. Clothing we can take if it's new. We don't take donate,
that's just hard.
Right?
It gets to be too much.
Exactly. Food, anything that you might imagine. If you were an 18-year-old teenager who's trying to figure things out on their own, maybe you don't have your home to go home to, right? Like those are resources that are in need.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
I love that. No, I love your organization, and I mean it's close to my heart, and we just love hearing about Columbus organizations. And what you're doing, and kids always have a big place in my heart.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Mallory. And I will watch the series.
You need to. There's also, it depends on how much we can delve into the Babysitters Club now.
So delve.
There is a podcast called Stuck in Stony Brook that I have recently gone down that rabbit hole. Every single episode is about a different book. And there's 3 individuals who host the podcast, and 2 of them are sisters. One of them is their lifelong best friend. And they, I imagine, are roughly your age. So they grew up on the books. And they're now, I forget their positions, titles now, but one of them is like a child and adolescent psychologist. One of them is a feminist scholar. And I forget what the other one is. But
so they're coming at it from different angles.
And it's like listening to a really, really well thought out book club. Like if you are really wanting to have a fun book club discussion, it's like listening to that. So they're talking about, the adjectives used to describe the girls. So like Christy is bossy and Marianne is babyish and Dawn is, or Claudia is exotic. And they're, you know what I mean? How many times do they
Stacey's
each get these?
Popular,
exactly.
Or something like
that. Yeah. Elegant, I think Stacey gets. Yeah. So, something like that. But they break down like how this character reacted in this situation. Is this how a 13-year-old really would have handled this situation? Does this make sense, like from that psychology, or why did this happen? Like, really, really well thought out.
You're pulling me away from true crime. I hope you know.
Yeah,
that,
it's definitely a different vibe than true crime, unless it's like Claudia and the Phantom Phone Call. That's kind of true crime. One. Yeah,
I did like that one.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to think of what's. There's a lot of books, let's be fair, but I did like the vacation ones.
Yes.
Those were some
I think my favorite one, which I gave to somebody at some point and never got back, which is a huge regret of mine, but it's the one where they get shipwrecked.
Yes.
That one was so good and really made me think that there was a likelihood that I would get shipwrecked. And I was like, how would I collect water?
That was the 80s with quicksand.
Yes.
We were guaranteed to die in quicksand at some point in our lives.
That is so funny. I remember my grandma getting a book for me from the library with quicksand tips in it and me being like, I should take note of this. Yeah.
Because it's everywhere.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Apparently.
Yeah.
In every movie.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I will watch that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of the podcast?
Stuck in Stony Brook.
Stuck in Stony Brook. Okay, I'll have to write that down. Mallory, this is so much fun.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Is great.
I've never gotten homework from a podcast before that I'm actually going to do, so I'm really excited.
Good. It's a really good. At a certain point, so I didn't know this either. I could be taking up too much of everyone's
you're totally
time, so cut me off. But I have always been mystified by how Anna Martin wrote so many books. She only wrote up to book like 35 or something like that, and after that, it's ghostwritten.
I think I remember the change of that happening.
Yeah.
Or hearing about that.
Yeah. And now reading them, because I never really, like, the books that I got from my cousin, they didn't go up that high. And then other ones that I'd find in the library, like, it was hard to find the older ones. Yeah. Or, I mean, like, the more recent ones, like the later ones in the series. And I do agree. Like, they're written differently. They feel more rushed through and stuff. Because I've gone back and
did that happen, like, with Sweet Valley? I never read the Sweet Valley.
I imagine.
Sweet Valley High or
yeah,
whatever, but
I imagine so. I only read a couple of those books, but
Fear Street The R.L. Stein books, I did
Sure.
read some of those because those were fun. I didn't get into any other series, though. Like, I got into Babysitter's Club.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think that, like, for me growing up, there weren't girl-centric books.
Yes.
We just didn't have that.
Well, the pipeline from, like, American Girl, Little House on the Prairie, into which, if you ever read Little House on the Prairie,
My
you didn't.
sister did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had another podcast recommendation for you. American Girl, Little House on the Prairie, Babysitter's Club. You have all these books with strong-willed female characters where, with the exception of of Marianne and Logan, it's not really like, you know, crushing after a boy, whatever. Boy Crazy Stacy, another classic.
Yes.
At a certain point, like, those books are too easy of a reading level, right? You move on. And I found that I stopped reading in middle school-ish, junior high, not because I thought reading was uncool. Like, I loved to read, but I would just keep rereading these Babysitter's Club books that I'd read when I was 8, you know? And I now go back and attribute that to, like, so many of the books for that reading level are like boy meets girl next door and they fall in love and oh, how cute, the football player. And I just didn't jive with that, right?
Yeah.
Or it was like Harry Potter and fantasy. And I didn't want that. I wanted the strong-willed female character who does X, Y, and Z, you know? So
I love that.
Yeah.
Now I have so much reading and listening to do.
Yeah.
No, it's a good problem to have.
It is.
I'm a big in the car listener. So one of my girlfriends that I worked with when I worked at the opera, I call her like my book club junkie.
Yeah.
I'm like, Kelsey, I need a new book.
Yeah, help. Yeah. You always need someone like that in your life.
It's really good. Yeah. And she's like, here's one. What do you got?
Yeah.
So we're like trading these book titles over.
That's great.
I love that. Mallory, thank you so much. I'm so excited and really, you guys are doing amazing things. And I know you're going to continue to do amazing things. And we advocate for you and we support hardcore.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Boxland Media. Think big.